Hello, my name is Nicolas and today I would like to show you how to set up and play Discordia. Discordia is a game for 1 to 4 players ages 12 and up. It plays in about 70 minutes. It's designed by Bernd Eisenstein and it's published by Iron Games. Now, before we travel back in time and I show you how to play, I would kindly ask you to like and subscribe the Meeplecare channel.
Welcome to the Rhine Valley. It's 49 AD and we find ourselves in the Roman Empire along the northern border with the Germanic Empire. You are the governor of one of the many military outposts that are developing into larger settlements. As governors, you are responsible to ward off the raids of the Germanic tribes. However, at the same time, you each try to develop your settlement's infrastructure to create a thriving environment for brisk trade. You hope to achieve this by expanding your settlement with ports and farmlands, marketplaces and forts, to create a home for the many sailors, soldiers, merchants and farmers that will be living in your settlement. This is quickly becoming a race because in 4 years' time, the Empress Agrippina will visit the area together with her son Nero and honor the most successful governor. Today I will show you how to set up the game for 2 players. First, place the game board in the middle of the table. In this next part of setup, you will be placing tiles next to the game board. The number of tiles that you will use depends on the player count. So for this example, I will show you how to set up a 2-player game, but in the rulebook on page 4, you can find a detailed overview for all other player counts. First, look for all tiles that show you a shovel symbol in the top left corner. These are the city expansion tiles. Sort all these tiles into 6 stacks according to their type. You have ports, farmlands, marketplaces and forts. These city expansion tiles will be your foundation to later place ships, farms, market stalls and barracks on top of them. For a 2-player game, each of these 4 stacks must have 4 tiles. All tiles in each stack are the same, so you can place all tiles in one stack on top of each other. These 2 stacks of city expansion tiles are the expedition tiles and the development tiles. You will use these to expand your expedition path and development track. For our 2-player game, we need 2 of each. The manipulator tokens will help you to change the value of the dice. You need 5 of these. In the box you will also find these tiles that have a special border. These are tower tiles. You have military towers. These will help you to defend your settlement from the Germanic attacks. And there are trading towers. They will provide you with trading benefits. You need 3 of each kind, so you would shuffle each stack, and since they are all unique, you will have to place them next to each other so that each tile is visible. As you can already see, their special border matches the border of another tile, this board tile. This means that during the game, towers will be placed in the port to help you protect and to help you with trading. The decree tiles are goals that you can achieve during the game. Whenever you fulfill a decree, you will place it on your player board to gain bonuses. Shuffle all the decree tiles and place 5 tiles face up near the game board. During the game, you can earn privileges. They will help you by giving you an ongoing or a one-time bonus. Again, shuffle all tiles that you have and place 5 of them face up near the game board. This area of the board is the star cult space. As printed in this space, you place a number of stars in this spot. As you can see, for our 2-player game, you place 24 stars in this location. The rest of setup is the same for any amount of players. You continue setup by preparing the Germanic invasion. To do this, you need these tiles. On one side they have a color, green or red. First, make 2 stacks of these tiles according to that color. Then, sort each stack according to the letter on their back. The red tiles have A and C tiles, and the green tiles have B and D tiles. Shuffle all of the tiles that you have with these letters separately. To create a Germanic Attack, you need to place one C tile and 3 A tiles on top of it as a face-down stack on the left side of the board. You do the same for the green tiles, where you will place 3 B tiles on top of a D tile and place this stack on the right side of the Germanic Attack space. Place all remaining Germanic Attack tiles back into the game box. You can find a handy reminder of this part of setup printed on the game board. This ship is the Seasons boat. A game of Discordia is normally played during 4 years, 4 rounds, and each year is divided into seasons in which players will take their actions. To start the game, place the Seasons boat in the box for the first season. The Seasons boat will move at the start of each season, and when it has reached the end of the track, it will return to the start of the track to begin a new year. You might have noticed that the Seasons boat will be moving 5 times instead of 4. This is not a mistake, because the Romans included a 5th season, the Saturnalia, and it was an extra season between autumn and winter. You place the boat on the first space of this track and you reveal the top tile of the first Germanic Attack pile. You can see a reminder of this action on the board. Next up, shuffle these 6 action tiles and randomly place one of those in each of the corresponding spaces on the game board. They show you the main actions that you can take. These are the city tiles. Shuffle them together and stack them next to the game board in multiple piles. It does not matter whether some are face up or face down. Just take one pile and lay out as many rows of tiles as there are players. Each row consists of 6 tiles, and make sure that each tile is exactly in a column with one of these action tiles. So in your 2-player game, you create 2 rows of 6 tiles. All tiles are placed face up, but you might have noticed that the ship tile is double-sided. On one side you have the big blue anchor symbol, this is the ship side, but on the other side you see a market stall with a small anchor symbol. When placing this tile in the display, you place it with the big blue anchor symbol face up. You will be able to flip this tile to its other side during the game. As a final step in this general setup, take all 140 workers and put them in the bag and give the bag a good shake. These are the Janus tiles. You will only use these when you are playing a solo game, so you can put these back into the box. Let me now show you how to set up your own settlement. Each player takes a city map board. Let me first take you on a tour in your settlement. This is the aqueduct. You can place this supply ring on the 0 spot of this track. The aqueduct will help you to deal with infrastructure shortage. This is the storage area. Anytime that you fulfill a decree, you can place it in this area. This dice box will hold your die when you are the first player during a season. Next to the storage area, you can also find these 2 tracks. The first one is the expedition track. This is the symbol for this track. The second one is the development track. This track is referred to by this gear symbol. Placing stars on these tracks will unlock you bonuses and benefits. The rest of your city board is the city area. As you can see, it already has some of the city expansion tiles printed on it. These are the spots where you can immediately place a matching city tile. I will explain these symbols when I explain you how to play the game, but you can already guess that this is where we will be expanding and building our city. Now, each player takes 6 stars from the game board and places them in their reserve. Next, each player draws 15 workers from the bag and also places them in their reserve. Each player also gets one of these manipulator tokens, and you place it with its active side, this yellow side, face up. Now you randomly choose a starting player, and this player receives the starting player marker, and he also receives the 3 dice. Starting with the player to the right of the starting player, the last player in turn order, and continuing counterclockwise, each player takes one of the city tiles from the game board. You place this tile on one of the corresponding city expansions in your settlement. So, if you would choose this farm tile, you would now place it on your farmland on the leftmost spot. That would be this spot. Now that you have finished setup, I can teach you how to play the game. As I already told you during setup, a game is played over 4 years. And each year consists of 5 seasons. During each season, each player takes one turn, performing one main action along with possible secondary actions. Each season, one player is the Maximus. This is the player who will roll and place the dice and be the first player to take a turn. For the first season of each year, that will be the starting player. After each year, you will determine who will be the next starting player for the following year. The main goal of the game is to have the least workers left in your reserve at the end of the game. You will achieve this by deploying them onto your city tiles. There is, however, a special winning condition. If you manage to have no workers in your reserve at any time during the game, you immediately win the game. Let's take a look at how a year in the game is played and at the role of the Maximus player. It's year 1 and the starting player is the Maximus. As the Maximus, your first job is to roll the 3 dice and place them on the corresponding values on the game board. So of course, it's possible that more than one die is in one column if they roll the same number. Then the Maximus chooses one die and places that die in the corresponding slot of his storage area. He will use this die to take actions and no other player can use this die. Then the next player in clockwise order chooses a die from the 2 leftover dice. She uses this die to take her actions, but she does not place it on her board. This means that only the Maximus has his own private die, while all the other players can choose any one of the 2 leftover dice. They can even choose the same die. When you choose a die, you can use your manipulator to change the value of a die. Once all players have used the die, you move the season's boat 1 space to the right. The next player in turn order now becomes the new Maximus and rolls all 3 dice. Again, choosing a private die for himself and leaving the other 2 for all other players. When the season's boat reaches the 4th season, you see a few symbols on the track that remind you of what you have to do. You will refill all empty spaces in the city tile rows and you will reveal the top Germanic tile from the right stack. You now know the power of the Germanic Attack that you will try to fend off. After the end of the 5th season, you perform these end-of-year events that I'll explain later during this teach. Then a new year begins and you place the season's boat back on its first spot of the track. If no one has been able to win the game early by having no workers left in his reserve, the game will end at the end of the 4th year and is won by the player who has the least amount of workers left in his reserve. Now let me show you how you take a turn during a season. You first choose a die. If you're the Maximus, you have a choice between 3 dice, otherwise between 2. When you choose a die, you will be able to take one main action from all the main actions that you can see in that dice column. However, you are allowed to take any number of possible secondary actions and you are free to choose the order in which you want to perform these actions. I can also already tell you that choosing a die from a column that matches with the position of the season's boat will provide you with an extra secondary action. It is, however, important to know that each time when you gain a bonus during the game, you must perform it once and immediately. If you cannot or don't want to perform the bonus, you lose it. Gaining a bonus will most likely be the result of taking an action. So, let's start by taking a look at the main actions. Depending on which die you choose, you will have a choice between the following main actions. Take a city tile, deploy a worker onto city tiles, take a city expansion tile, develop, or take stars. Let's start by building a city tile. You can choose one of the city tiles from the column below the chosen die. Let's take a look at the 4 types of city tiles. You have ships, barracks, market stalls and farms. You have to place each of them onto its corresponding city expansion. Ships go on ports, barracks go on forts, market stalls go onto marketplaces, and farms go onto farmlands. Each city expansion only has room for 1 city tile. Since your starting settlement already has some of these city expansions, you can immediately start by placing city tiles onto those expansions. City tiles are always placed without gaps from left to right. If you don't have a free spot on a city expansion tile, you can overbuild an already built one of the same type. If you don't want to overbuild a previously placed tile, you have to place a corresponding city expansion tile first. And then you can place the city tile on top of the newly built city expansion. As I already showed you, these ships are a special case. They are double-sided and on one side they show you the ship and on the other side the market stall. When we take a look at the deployment action, you will learn how to flip this tile to its market stall side and then you will be able to place it onto one of these marketplace extensions. Each city tile also has 1 or 2 dice with a value printed on them. I will show you how these work when we get to the secondary actions. Placing tiles in your city can provide you with some bonuses, either by placing a tile with a bonus or by covering up bonus symbols on city expansion tiles. Remember that you must take these bonuses immediately. You cannot save them for later during the game. These city tiles have a bonus printed on them. You receive that bonus when you place the tile into your city. For example, these tiles show you the expedition path symbol. So when you place a tile like this into your city, you can also place a star in your expedition path. This is your expedition path. By placing stars on this path, you will unlock bonuses and secondary actions. When placing a star, you have to take a star from your reserve and place it onto the track. When placing a star on a track, you always start at the bottom of the track and make your way up. If you don't have any stars in your reserve, you cannot take this bonus. This tile shows you the symbol of the supply ring. When you place this tile into your city, you can move the supply ring 1 space to the right on your aqueduct track. Through the hole in the middle of the ring, you can see a value. This value will help you to mitigate infrastructure shortage. But more on that later when we deal with the events at the end of the year. You can never move beyond 10, but for each additional step that you would take, you may swap 2 workers. I will cover how you swap workers later during the explanation. If later during the game you would overbuild a tile with one of these 2 bonuses, you don't have to adjust the expedition or aqueduct track. If there would be workers on tiles that you overbuild, these workers are placed back into your personal reserve. You can also gain a bonus when you cover up this symbol that you see on these expansion tiles. And this is the infrastructure symbol. This symbol will reveal its meaning when we deal with the end of year events, but I can already tell you that the more of these symbols you will cover up, the better you will start the next year. The next main action to take a look at is the deployment action. This is a very important action because it's the action that will allow you to place workers from your reserve onto the city tiles, bringing you closer to winning the game. A deployment action has this symbol and it shows you one of 4 colors of city buildings. Whenever you may deploy workers onto city tiles, you always have to follow these rules. With a deployment action, you may fill 1 space of a city tile that matches the color of the action symbol. So in this case it shows me a red symbol, so I can place and make a deployment onto a red tile, onto a barracks tile. This is a space on a city tile. When there are multiple spaces on a tile, you always have to start by filling the space on the top of the tile and then making your way in a clockwise direction. You always have to place the exact amount of workers on a space, and of course these workers also need to match the color of the city tile. You would place the yellow farmers onto the farms, the red soldiers onto the barracks, the blue sailors onto the ships, and the white merchants onto the market stalls. If you need to fill a space and you don't have enough workers of that type, you cannot take that deployment action. If a space shows you a grey worker, it may be filled with a worker of any type. When all the spaces on a tile are occupied, the tile is completely occupied and all workers will be removed from that tile and placed back into the bag at the end of the year. There is, however, one exception to this rule. Remember the dual-sided ship tile? Whenever this one is completely occupied, like here in this case, you will return all sailors to the bag at the end of your turn. Then you will turn the ship over to the market stall side and place it on a free space on a market stall expansion in your city. Or you use it to overbuild a previously placed market tile. This also lets you move your supply marker on the aqueduct track, as you can see by this symbol here in the left corner. Since you do this at the end of your turn, you cannot send merchants to this market stall during the same turn. You will have to wait until the next season. We already know this shovel symbol. It is the symbol for a city expansion tile. So if you choose this symbol as your main action, you can take one of the available city expansion tiles and place them on or near your player board. As you saw before, these 4 city expansion tiles will provide you with a space to place new city tiles on top of them. Just like with the city tiles, you place these expansion tiles from left to right, and you can even place an expansion tile next to your player board if you already filled all spots of that type of tile in your city. When you place a city expansion tile on your board, you also gain an extra bonus action by covering up the symbols that are printed on the board. This star symbol allows you to take 1 star from the star cult space and place it into your reserve. These 2 symbols you already know. This one allows you to place a star onto the expedition track, and this one lets you move your ring on the aqueduct track. This gear symbol is new. This is the symbol for the develop action. Just like with the expansion path, you start with the space on the bottom and work your way up. Whenever you cover it up with a city expansion tile, you may place a star from your reserve onto the gear track, unlocking new bonuses and actions along the way. When I show you how the secondary actions work, we will take a closer look at the expedition path and the explorer track. The last symbol that you can cover up by placing a city tile expansion is this infrastructure symbol. Just like when placing a city tile, covering these symbols will help you out at the end of the year. The other city expansion tiles that you can take are these 2 tiles. You can use these to make your expedition path or your development track longer, allowing you to place more stars on each track. When taking one of these tiles, you just place it above the appropriate track. Developing your city is another main action. It has this gear symbol, and you already know how this works because you can also activate it when you cover up the symbol on your city board. As you can see, this action is only available when you choose a die with a value of 6. Or, if you have unlocked this option, then you are also allowed to take this development action when you choose a die with a value of 5. Let's take a closer look at the bonus actions on this track. On top of unlocking the gear action when taking a value 5 die, you can also swap workers. You can recognize this action by the red and the green arrow and the value printed in the middle. When you perform this swap action, you always first draw the printed amount of workers from the bag. In this case, it's 2. Then you put the same number of workers from your reserve back into the bag. These may be the same workers that you just drew, or you can pick any combination of other workers to place back into the bag. When unlocking this bonus symbol, this will allow you as a secondary action to take one of these city expansion tiles. Unlocking these two symbols will allow you, as usual, to place an extra star on your expedition path, and it lets you move your supply ring onto the aqueduct track one space to the right. I will return to these 3 permanent bonuses, recognizable by the infinity symbol, when I explain the special deployment as a secondary action. When you choose this action, you take that amount of stars from the star-cult space and place them into your reserve. You need these stars to progress on both tracks. If your supply is empty, you can no longer take the bonus. If the star-cult space is empty, you can also no longer take this main action. Before or after your main action, you can take some of the following secondary actions when they apply. The first secondary action is a very important one, because now I can finally show you why all city tiles have 1 or 2 dice with a value printed on them. These dice symbols might give you a special deployment action. Farm tiles have yellow dice symbols, ships blue symbols, barrack red symbols, and the market stall has grey dice symbols. Now, how does this work? Each time when you choose a die to perform your main action, you check the city tiles on your board. If 1 or more of these city buildings have a die that matches the color and the value, you can take 1 deployment action onto each of these tiles. So 1 die can result in more than 1 special deployment, especially with these market stalls, because they have grey die symbols, and you only need to match their value and not their color to take a special deployment action onto those tiles. This means that when you combine this special deployment with the main deployment, you can do more than 1 deployment on the same tile during the same season. Of course, you have to follow the same rules for deployment as when taking a normal deployment action, using the correct color and amount of workers and starting with the space on the top of the tile and working your way in a clockwise direction. Let me show you how this would work when you take a turn. Let's suppose that I choose this yellow tree. Since I am the Maximus player, I would place this die onto this spot of my game board. And now I can choose between any of these main actions. I can do a deployment on a red space, on a yellow space. I can choose to take a star from the star space here, or I can pick any of these 2 tiles to place into my city. Since I have no more expansion tiles available to build on, I would not be taking this action because I don't want to overbuild one of these previously placed city tiles. So what if I choose my 3 yellow die and I use it to perform a deployment onto a yellow space? So now I can choose any of these 2 farms to perform 1 deployment. So I want to place one of my yellow farmers onto a farm tile. Following the rules, I have to place it on this topmost space and fill it with exactly 1 yellow worker. I will place it like this so you can see how I place them, but normally, of course, you would place them standing up. Then I took my main action. Before or after, I could have taken some secondary actions. How do we do that? We take a look again at our die. It tells me that's a yellow tree. If I look, I have a corresponding city tile that also has a yellow die with a value 3. So now I am allowed to make a special deployment onto this tile. If we take a look at the next space, it requires me to place 2 yellow farmers. Luckily, I have a lot of these farmers, so I can place 2 on this space. But that's not all, because I also have a market stall. When looking at my market stall, I see that it shows me a value 3 die with a grey background. This means that I can use any colored value 3 die to also do a deployment onto this tile. I have a value 3 die here, so I can now place 1 white of merchant onto this market stall. Now remember the development track. The 3 bonuses on the track have something to do with this special deployment. If you unlock one of these bonuses with a star, you can now treat all dice values of that color as grey dice, just like you do for the market stalls. So if I would have unlocked this one, this means that now anytime that I choose a die with a value of 6, for example a yellow 6, I'm also allowed to use it to do a deployment, a special deployment, onto this ship. Because now, by unlocking this, I can use a die with a value 6 of any color to perform a special deployment onto this ship. When unlocking this one, I also get one of the manipulator tokens, and here I can again move the supply ring one space onto the aqueduct track. Of course, it would also be possible for me to choose this yellow 3 die, first do a deployment onto a red space, so I could place one of my workers or maybe 2 red workers here on the next space of this city tile. And then I could again use this yellow 3 to do a deployment onto my farm and onto the market stall, placing 1 merchant onto the market stall and placing 2 yellow farmers onto my farm tile. Another secondary action is triggered when you choose a die that's in the same season row as the season's boat. When you do this, you can also use the bonus action that is printed next to the watchtower. When taking a closer look on all these bonus actions, we already know most of the symbols except this one. This is the tower symbol. Whenever you unlock this bonus, you take a tower from the supply and you place it in an open spot above a port tile. Just like with city tiles, you are allowed to build a tower on top of a previously placed tower if you have no spaces in your harbor. Now might be a good time to see what you can do with these towers. As I already showed you during setup, there are 2 types of towers that you can choose when gaining this bonus. You have the military towers and the trading towers. When you build a trading tower, you get a one-time bonus of moving your supply ring 2 spaces to the right. These towers have grey die symbols, just like the market stalls, meaning that when you choose a die with a value matching the trading tower, you can activate the swap action on the tile. So if I previously built this trading tower into my harbor, and again choosing this value 3 yellow die, I would not only be able to activate this farm, this market stall, but also this tower. And this would allow me to take 4 workers from the back and exchange them with any 4 workers from my reserve. A military tower will help you to defend against the Germanic attacks. When you build a military tower, you will place it also in a space in your harbor, and if it has one of these symbols printed on it, you can now take this bonus. These towers can also provide you with special spaces, extra spaces for your soldiers. You occupy them in the same way as you could occupy a barrack. You can occupy them using a main red deployment action, or when the tile has a red die symbol, you can of course also use it for a special deployment. So for example, instead of a value 3 yellow die, I now have a value 3 red die. As my main action, I choose to do a deployment onto a red space. So for example, I could choose this barracks and I have to place 1 red soldier onto the barracks. But then, since I chose the value 3 red die, I can also place a soldier onto this space, onto the watchtower. So I could place 1 here, meaning that this is now also completely occupied, just like this one. And that's not all, because since I picked a value 3 die, I'm also allowed to activate this trading tower and this market stall, because here I can use a die of any color as long as it matches the value of the die that I chose. The next secondary action is a simple one. You can find its explanation on your player board. After you build your 4th and then your 6th city expansion, you may take any one of the privileges on display. Privileges either give you a permanent advantage or a one-time advantage. You can recognize a permanent advantage by the infinity symbol in the top left corner. With a privilege like this one's, one of your type of workers is considered a wild for all type of workers. So for example, in this case, my farmers, my yellow workers, can now be used as any worker. So I could even deploy this yellow worker as a white one, a red one, or a sailor. The same goes for these 2. Here now, my white workers would become a wild for all other colors. If you have two identical privileges with a permanent advantage, like here, if I have these two permanent privileges, all your workers are now wild. So this means that I can use any worker to go onto any space. The other privileges are one-time advantages. Like this one lets you move one space on the aqueduct, and I can place a star into my development track. This one allows me to take 2 stars from the supply, and this one, whenever you see this deployment symbol but with a gray background, not any of the regular colors, it means that I can do one deployment onto any space, of course following the same deployment rules as always. There's something special about these privileges because unlike all other bonuses, you can save these advantages to use it during a later turn. Just flip over the tile face down when you have used its bonus. You already saw the bonus actions on the development track, so now let's take a look at the bonus actions that you can gain on the exploration path. The only symbol that we have not yet seen is this first one. It's a part of the swap action. Instead of swapping workers, you can now place one of your workers from your choice, from your reserve, into the bag. If ever you see this symbol's counterpart, meaning it's a red arrow that's pointing from the bag to a worker with a number, you have to take that amount of workers from the bag and place them into your reserve. The last thing that can award you with secondary actions is when you are able to fulfill a decree. Take the fulfilled decree, flip it over and use it to cover the lowest space on the storage track. Just like before, perform any bonuses that you cover up. For instance, covering up this first spot allows me to take a star from the supply, and again it covers one of these infrastructure symbols, and that's a good thing. The next bonuses let me do a deployment on any space, because again it shows me this gray deployment symbol. And on the third and the fourth one, I can place workers from my reserve into the bag. When this track is completely filled, you can no longer gain any of these decrees. The decrees are first come, first served, so the moment when you have achieved it, you're allowed to take it and to place it on the track. Here it will go to the player who is the first to gather 3 of these manipulator tokens. Here you have to have at least 3 farming city tiles into your city, and these must be occupied by at least 7 workers. Here it goes to the first player who has 3 towers, has moved to spot 6 of this exploration path, or the first player who has 1 of each of these city tile types and has 9 workers deployed into its city. Whenever a game uses dice as a mechanism to choose your actions, it's always nice when you get a way to mitigate the value on the die that you choose. To do this, you will use these manipulator tokens. At the start of each game, each player gets 1 of these tokens and you will place it with its active side, its yellow side face up. It's now ready to use. Every year, you may use each of your manipulators 1 time. You use it to modify the die of your choice without physically changing it. You may increase or decrease the value of a die by 1 for each manipulator that you use. So you are allowed to use more than 1 token on 1 die. All tokens that you use are flipped to the other side and they will be turned back to their active side at the beginning of a new year. When you modify a die, you not only modify it for its main action, but you will also modify it for any secondary actions, like the secondary deployment actions. So if I change this blue 5 die into a 4, I can now choose from the main actions from the 4 column. But if I look at my city, I also can only activate any city tiles that have a blue 4 or a grey 4. After the seasons both reach the season 5 space and you have performed all your actions, the year ends. Starting with the starting player and continuing in a clockwise order, 2 events are performed. The first being the Germanic raids and the second is the infrastructure shortage. Let's start by fending off those Germanic attacks. At the start of the year, you flip the first Germanic tile face up, and this already showed you a part of the Germanic attack strength and the damage you will receive if you are unable to fend off the attack. When the season's boat reached the 4th space, you flipped over the 2nd attack tile, revealing the 2nd value of the attack and the bonus that you will receive if you can defend your settlement against the attack. Now it's time to add up these two values, and this is the full strength of the attack. This total cannot be more than 7. Now it would be 4. To calculate your defense power, you will take a look at your barracks and your military towers. Your strength is equal to the number of soldiers on all your barracks and towers that are completely occupied. For instance, these two barracks are completely occupied, this one is not. This tower is also completely occupied, so this would give me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of my defense strength. If your strength is equal or higher than the Germanic attack power, you receive the reward printed on the green tile. If your strength is less than the Germanic power, you suffer the damage that is printed on the red Germanic tile. Just keep in mind that if you don't have the corresponding good or city tiles of the penalty, that damage will not affect you. In my case, I had 5 defense power. The Germanic attack had a value of 4, so I successfully defended against the attack. And I would now receive the bonus on the green tile. This would mean that I can place a star onto this development track. If, however, I would not have succeeded in defending against that attack, I would have to remove a ship and a market-stalled city tile from my city. Now that you can defend your settlement against Germanic hordes, it's time to check how well you worked on your infrastructure. Remember this infrastructure symbol? I already told you it's a good idea to cover them up when you can. Now I can finally explain to you why. Because now you check if you have an infrastructure shortage. First, you determine the value of your infrastructure shortage. To do this, you count up all the infrastructure symbols that are visible on your city map. You increase this value by 1 for each space on your city tiles or towers that does not have any workers on it. You can, however, now decrease this value by the current supply value of your aqueduct. So in this example, I have covered up a lot of the infrastructure symbols. I only have 1, 2, 3 remaining, but I have a lot of spaces that don't have a worker. So I would add to this 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. And I can subtract 2 from that from this supply ring. So it would leave me with 14. Now, what does this mean for you? Starting with the starting player and moving in a clockwise direction, you draw as many workers from the bag as that value that you just counted. So in my case, it would mean that I now have to draw 40 new workers from the bag, and I would be adding them to my reserve. Since the aim of the game is to be the first one to have no workers left in your reserve, you want to keep this value as low as possible, and that's why covering up these infrastructure symbols is a good idea. Of course, if your shortage would be less than 0, you may return that number of workers of any color from your reserve into the bag. As a reminder, you can see how to calculate this value by looking at the second step in the end of year effects. As a final and important step at the end of the year, you now place all workers from completely occupied city tiles and towers back into the bag, leaving any workers on tiles that are not completely occupied on the city tiles. They will stay here to start the new year. If it's the end of the first, the second or third year, you would now prepare for the start of a new year. To do this, you follow these steps. First, remove all city tiles from the top row of the game. Then, move all remaining city tiles up 1 row and refill the display where needed. Next, you flip all your manipulator tokens back to their active side, and you then place the season's boat on the space of the first season. Remove the 2 face-up Germanic tiles from the game and reveal the next red Germanic tile. To determine the starting player for the next year, Each player counts the number of workers in his reserve, and whoever has the most becomes the new starting player and takes the starting player token. If there is a tie, you give the starting player marker to the next clockwise player with the most workers. As I told you before, the game can end in two ways. If you manage to have no more workers in your reserve at any time during the game, you win immediately. Otherwise, the player who has the fewest workers in his reserve at the end of the 4th year and its 2 end-of-year events is the winner of the game. In case of a tie, you win if you have the fewest workers left on city tiles and towers.
This is all you need to know to set up and play Discordia. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and you can always follow Meeplecare on Facebook, Instagram and YouTube. This was Meeplecare, taking care of your meeple needs.